Welcome to Making the Deal, Frameworks for Transactions. This is the podcast focused on lower middle market transactions and how to bring them to a close. I'm Shawn Mercino.
And I'm Joe Allen.
We appreciate you joining us. We're going to hop into a conversation on networking, dive into that a little bit. But Joe, do you want to recap us on the past few episodes?
Yeah, so we've had some great episodes. The last episode we did was one-on-one with Shawn and I. That one was focused on different types of lenders and where they imply in a transaction. Great conversation, like we always say, like we could talk for days about stuff, just one-on-one. We love bringing in guests, but I think that was a pretty good conversation for people to listen to as a kind of entrance into what kind of sources are out there to bring your transaction where you need it to be. Before that one, we had Matt Derry from the Q5 Experience on to talk about owner readiness and exit planning. That was a great conversation. Really enjoyed having Matt on to talk about how they get the owner ready, not only from like a financial position and making sure you have the right team members in place, but also mentally ready, because that mental piece of the transaction it can be very taxing on people.
Yep, big differentiator for them too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we really appreciate Matt being on. If you haven't listened to that one, please go back, give it a listen, give it a like, leave a comment, all those kind of fun things. So.
Absolutely. Let's dive in. I guess my first question to you is, how do you network, Joe? What does that look like for you?
So networking for me, which is a big part of what I do. I mean, it's and let's start this off. Networking is, yes, it's meeting people, but it's also the relationship building part of it, right?
Totally.
You can do as much as you want in terms of networking, but like building that relationship is very important,
right?
Because otherwise you're just meeting people and it's not going anywhere, right? So for me, I've basically got two sectors that I use for networking. One would be just like basic one-on-one outreach. Mm-hmm. Either I get introduced by somebody, or I do cold outreach to somebody, or something happens where I get into a one-on-one situation. The other one for me would be the big events. Mm-hmm. So, going to an ACG or an AM and AA or a TMA or an RMA, all those different kind of organizations that are, whether they're industry specific to what we do or it's like a larger networking event, something like that.
Right.
Like that's how I do it. Is that pretty common for you?
Absolutely. I would agree. The only mix I'd throw in there is maybe small groups, which, depending on what firm you're working with or what professional service team, maybe they have a group of 5 and then you bring a group of 5.
Yeah.
I tend to find a lot of value in those. I would say you can never beat the one-on-ones. Those are super valuable. But I would say the small group also brings a different element, where maybe people who get lost in the crowd at some of those big events but are better in the format of like a 5v5. So I would say those 3 are kind of the common ones for me as well.
So let me ask you this. When you're going about, let's say, those one-on-one situations, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, you could do it in a lot of different formats, right? Some people choose coffee, some people choose lunch. I think ones that I've seen stick out in my mind more recently, and maybe this is one-on-one or small group focus, is some kind of common interest, right? I mean, we've done shooting events before, small group.
Yeah.
That appeals to a different group than somebody who wants to go to a sports game or somebody who wants to golf or somebody who wants to go bowling. I'm using an example, but there's people that are in the boating community, and that's the way they decide to connect. So, and that is more often than not one-on-one or small group, right? You're not doing a big event. For the most part, you're not doing a boat day for a big event. But so that can look different for everybody. And I would say lean into what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with the coffees and the breakfast, and that's just the time that you're the best, you're the sharpest, then lean into that. Mm-hmm. But also, I would also say be flexible, because the other person and part of that relationship building might have some interests that differ from yours. So try to lean into those too.
Yeah. To your point, so I go to a lot of the big events.
Right.
Like to some degree, I feel like you kind of have to do that stuff. And it's a skill set to be learned. Mm-hmm. Like it is a difficult skill set, because especially, look, I'm naturally an introvert. I've had to teach myself to be an extrovert in those big rooms, but I still walk into those rooms and I get uncomfortable. Like I don't see a bunch of faces that I know. Like that can be very, very difficult. And part of it is just telling people, like, what do you have to lose, right? Sure. In your mind, you just got to go through that. What do I have to lose?
Right.
When I come to networking, though, I do prefer the one-on-ones. Mm-hmm. To your point, I am a breakfast, coffee, lunch happy hour guy because I like that one-on-one. I can really engage. I can get locked in.
Right.
I feel like you get rid of kind of the awkwardness of that first conversation very quickly.
Right.
Which is tough.
Sure.
And I don't feel the pressure in those types of situations. Right. I don't know about you, but
I would agree. I think to your point, it's easier to overcome than it is at some of those bigger events because you might not have a genuine conversation. You guys are getting interrupted or there's an event going on, whatever. So yeah, I do think that the one-on-one, it's easier to get to your conversation, easier to get to know the other person.
Yep.
And to leverage whatever, similarities or crossovers or cross-section of opportunities that you guys share. You can almost get there a little sooner.
Yeah.
While also genuinely building something.
Yeah. I do like the smaller events like you mentioned,
right.
like doing like the shooting events. We've had a ton of fun doing networking events with shooting events. Right. Because, and I don't think most people realize, a lot of people just haven't done it before. I was lucky enough to be brought up in it, so I understand it. But it's something that you can bond with very quickly.
Sure.
Like the thrill of like hitting the first clay if you've never done it before is super fun for people. So like there's a lot of excitement. You kind of naturally bond over that. Absolutely. So finding something like that. So when you're in a networking situation, I find look for that common ground, right? I don't care if it's working out, if it's going out to restaurants, if it's reading books. Like I don't care what it is.
Right.
Find the common ground because once you find something that you guys are both engaged in.
Right.
I personally find that the conversation starts flowing very easily.
Absolutely. Right. Because you're moving beyond that into the conversation, beyond whatever the event or task or whatever kind of networking you're doing. It quickly turns into the conversation. You get to know each other and whatnot. So I agree with you.
But you're also, it's not like you're just there for something at that point.
Sure.
And so going back to the relationship part of it, like you have to establish a relationship with somebody before you can really look at working together in whatever sense it is, whether it's a client, all COI, all these kind of things.
To know them, trust them. Be able to interact with them.
Yeah, who wants to work with somebody, like, especially if like it's a like a brand new relationship. It's not something that like you guys have run across each other in the past. You're not going to do work with somebody that you don't know.
Right.
I don't know too many people who just engage somebody that they've never met before.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I do find that relationship building to be very important part of that. Okay, so the big events. Yeah. So we just threw a big event with our networking group. Yeah. Speaking of networking, we started a networking group, Excel Networking Group. Big shout out to you guys. But we just had a big event. 180 people ended up showing up to it. What is it? Like 40 of them were actually part of our group. So we had 140 people there that let's say each one of us knew like 40 people, but that still left another 100 people that we didn't know. Sure. When you get into that room, do you have an idea of what you want to talk to people about? Do you look at the list beforehand? Like what do you do to try and like make sure that you're maximizing that time and make it like a fun event rather than a stressful event? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think most of those events turn out to be a blend. So let me address the list part. When able, I try to get the list. You think of some of the big flag networking groups in town. When you register, you can access the list. And I think that's golden. Honestly, a lot of your efforts should be spent, especially some of the people newer to the networking space or newer to their career. I think more time spent kind of researching and understanding who's there, what their industry is. Do they fit for you? Do they not fit? Because that might save you some time in the room if you can at all manage that. And often you can't, right? People come up, you talk, you get caught in a conversation. So maybe you can't manage it, but give yourself the best shot. Yeah. But I think that's true even of senior people who are out there networking, is to know that way you can be even more precise with your attention and who you want to meet if there's somebody you haven't, or if somebody you want to reconnect with that it's been a little bit. So so that's on the list part. But my approach is usually a blend of, I need to refresh a relationship, somebody I haven't seen, or there's a few names that I haven't met yet. And then I always go into it thinking somebody I know probably knows somebody else in the room who I don't know. And I think you and I can both agree is you get several years of networking under your belt, you walk into a room, there's a chance you're going to know somebody. And I love when it's a few people, but there's a lot of people you don't know that they know.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's so much value in that. So just leveraging your network, I mean, we talk about that all the time.
Yeah. The best way to get a relationship sparked is by finding a common person that you know.
Right.
So if you know somebody, reach out to them, say, hey, can you introduce me to this person at the event tomorrow? I see you're going.
Right.
I'd really like to meet this person.
Right.
That's always super powerful. And you're inherently, there's already a relationship there if they know that person well.
Totally.
So you are ushered into that relationship through that person.
Right. Absolutely.
Which is super valuable. There's that built trust that's been built there by somebody else is now kind of passed on to you.
Right. Right. No, I mean, you think about it at a personal level. Somebody calls me and I'm looking for a landscaper, and my buddy says, hey, I've got a guy.
Yep.
Automatically brings a certain level of seriousness, of believability, of, I trust that this work will get done.
Yep.
Think about it on a personal level. It's the same way from a business perspective, right? I mean, a lot of business owners, as we all know, operate that way, right? Mm-hmm. They have a friend who has a friend, or their business partner, knows somebody. It's the same thing in the COI world.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's super important to get that kind of trust built. The one thing I want to circle back to, because you actually mentioned something, like, I think one thing that people earlier in their career, like you mentioned, like we've been in our careers for a while, we've been doing this for a while, we know how to like go work a room to some degree. People newer in their career need to realize how important networking is.
Sure.
Creating those relationships are. Like, I don't care if you're new in your career, find somebody else who's newer in their career in a space that's similar to yours.
Right.
Somebody that you know that's at another firm. Find those people, build those relationships. You might be there to talk to somebody that's higher up on the chain, but the reality is you have to start somewhere, and you're starting from scratch. So walk into the room, find somebody that you're comfortable with.
Right.
Once you build that relationship with them, now you can say, hey, I'd really like to meet your boss. Do you think you can set up a meeting with them on a one-on-one? So it's purposeful in that you're building a relationship with somebody, but with an end goal of working with them and the people that you need to, the decision makers. Right.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think you're right about having that end goal in mind and working towards it. I also think there's some value in both of you bringing your bosses together. Right? Yeah. Because that's almost an easy entry point. Is not only do you want to get in front of that, but then it's like, you want to meet my boss, maybe similar level, similar time in their career. So you bring in value all around. Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a great point.
Okay, so we said work the attendee list. That's super valuable. Reaching out to people beforehand. When you get those lists, do you set up relationships where it's like, hey, I'm going to see you tomorrow?
Sure.
Next steps, like let's connect. Like, what do you do with that?
You know what? I haven't been as aggressive on that front. I can think of what you and I just talked about, and what you described is, if I know that you're throwing an event or you're involved in the throwing of an event, and you might know X, Y, and Z, hey, do you mind an intro to, or can you tell me more about this person? And the answer might be, I don't know, which is great for everybody, new contact, but it could also be, I need to reconnect with them, make sure you catch me when I'm talking to them, or something like that. So I think there is value in that. I think if people can do the base level of just kind of vetting out the names, finding fit, and that alone is probably helps you. But I do think when able, if you can reach out to somebody else who's going, and see if they know them, ton of value.
Yeah, it's kind of like taking a test, right?
For sure.
Like if you've studied, you walk into that test super comfortable.
Right.
If you do research on some of the people you want to connect with, go on their website. Yeah. See what they do.
Right.
When you run into them, say, hey, I know about your firm. You guys do this, right?
Right.
They're already going to be super impressed that you know more about their firm, and it actually puts them in a comfortable position to have that conversation with you, because now you're asking about them. The worst thing you can walk in and do is just like start talking about yourself.
Right.
And I think that's what you know, so it's kind of first nature to do something like that. But take a genuine interest in other people and what they do, who they are, that kind of stuff. I find that builds my relationships better than anything.
Well, I think you made a great point. Is that is our natural, right? As people, our natural is to start talking about ourselves. Leverage that. Yeah. Get the other person talking about themselves, and then just make the connection. Now, I know some of that doesn't happen immediately. It takes time to feel comfortable, but once you get that other person talking, chances are they're going to say something that you can provide value to, or latch onto, or make connection over what they say. So I think that's a great point, is leverage the fact that people want to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah, take a genuine interest in other people.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you're coming out of one of these events. So you've gone. Let's start with the one-on-ones.
Yep.
What is you're in your meeting. So I like to try and set up next steps before we leave the table.
Sure.
Let's say.
Yep.
Okay, let's do X, Y, and Z. I had a lunch today with Terry Maxud from UHY. Hi, Terry. We set it up.
Yeah.
We're each going to walk away with a list of things we need to do, and we're going to come back to each other and say, "Here's 3 things I want to achieve coming out of this this meeting," and then we're going to get back together. So now we've set up next steps.
Yep.
Do you try and do the same, or is it?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I mean, in situations where I'm meeting with you or people like Terry that are high performing, high activity, next steps, want to collaborate, I think there's room for that, no doubt. I think in some situations, maybe it's if you can educate them on what you do and learn a little bit more about them. So I guess part of it's what part of the arc are you with that person? In a mature kind of networking relationship, I think there's total room for these are the next step. These are to-do items. Let's circle back up. So I think the approach is probably determined by the nature of the person on the other side, but also the nature of where you guys are in the relationship. Because sometimes it might just be, hey, we're still feeling each other out. Do we have kind of a working connection?
Yeah.
Do we want to do this again? Almost,
and it doesn't have to be like we're jumping straight into business, right? Because again, your relationship building.
Right.
But it could be, look, you haven't figured out what the relationship is yet and where it's going to go and what the crossover might be. I network with people that are not in my industry and all the time.
Right.
And it's valuable to me. But like it can be as simple as, hey, after this meeting, I'm going to send you a deck on mid-states so that you know exactly what we do. If you could do the same for me so that I can understand better what you do,
right?
That's super valuable.
Absolutely. No, and that's an action step. So you're right. I think in any kind of interaction, there is some level of action step. Am I going, do we agree that we want to set up another meeting? Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe you can educate me more before our next meeting.
Yep.
So I think you're right. There's an action step in every interaction. The degree of the action varies based on the nature.
Yeah.
Is my thought.
Yeah. Okay. So what about like a big networking event? Is it pretty much the same, or is it like, let's get together, let's have cocktails, let me have you over to the office to meet my boss? Like what is the...
Yeah, I mean, the big events, as you know, as we talked about, can be somewhat overwhelming for people like us who've been in it already. So you never know what you're going to walk into. You never know what you're going to get, the course of the event, what's happening. So I put all those qualifiers out there because I don't want to, signal that it's super easy and you get all of your tasks completed every time. That's just not realistic. But I would say my goal is a fewfold. I want to meet a few new names and do one-on-ones with them. I want to refresh with some of the people that I haven't seen in a while. And then hopefully I'm reconnecting with people that I see all the time. I don't want to avoid you at an event just because we see each other a lot. I want to catch up, but we also have goal in mind.
To me, Shawn.
Exactly. No, it's just there's a lot of takeaways for me as I'm going into an event, and the new part takes the most work, obviously, because it's natural to catch up with who you know really well or who you sort of know, but it's not as easy to just walk into a conversation that you don't know anybody. So that takes a little bit more work. And the more you do beforehand, like we said, it's like anything. If you practice and prep for it, you're going to do better. So long-winded answer to your question, I think it's multifold on how I approach the big events. Try to cover a few different things. How about you? Do you...
So yeah, I always have some kind of action step. So here's the thing. For me, I like getting hold of people's business cards, because when you do go to one of these big events, it can very much be like, okay, I just met 15 people.
Sure.
How do I get in touch with everybody?
Right.
You might have forgot somebody you met, not because they weren't memorable, but just because
you
maybe you ended up into,
yeah,
exactly. Or maybe you didn't have enough time. Maybe they had to run, something like that. So I'm very big on always carrying business cards with me, making sure I'm leaving it with people, making sure I'm getting their contact information. So I find that very important. I have a giant stack of cards on my table, or on my desk. but it's always with a purpose, right?
Sure.
So don't be the person who's just collecting business cards. We all know somebody like that.
Right.
Our buddy Chris Druin, like he can tell you about collecting business cards. You know, he made a bunch of connections the other night at that event we were talking about. He said he got one business card, but he set up like 4 meetings separate of those business cards. Like, make sure you're developing those relationships.
Right.
You are relationship building.
Right. And early on, maybe that is tied to the card.
Yeah.
Right. That is your way to ensure. I mean, you and I both know people that operate that way. I operate that way. That's almost my tangible reminder for the next step.
Absolutely.
But if you get further in your career, maybe out of the gate, maybe you have a little bit more comfortability and you can set those 4 meetings without a card, by all means do it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a good a good option for people as they're networking.
And technology has made it easier, right? It doesn't have to be a business card. Look, you can stand there and go, hey, I just sent you a LinkedIn invite. Love to connect after this.
Right.
Make some kind of mental note if you didn't get their business card. Make some kind of mental note of who you met. The next day when you get into the office, send them an invite to connect. Send them a note that says, "Hey, great meeting you last night. Would really like to follow up and see if we can have a conversation, see if there's some kind of overlap, and see if we can help each other out."
Right. Right. Absolutely. No, I think that's. I think some people early in their career use that as, "Hey, I picked up 17 cards.
Yep.
Awesome. How many follow-ups?" And I won't steal your thunder because I want you to kind of dive into that concept of follow-up with us. But so it's an important piece of it, but it's not all of it. That in isolation isn't going to get you anywhere. It's that, then the follow-up.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to hop into that and kind of your approach from a follow-up perspective.
Yeah. Look, for me, follow-up is important in that, like, I will use LinkedIn with people that maybe I didn't get their business card, but I met them to make that initial connection.
Right.
And I'm very commonly will send a note that says, "Hey, great to meet you last night. Would love to get something on the calendar."
Right.
And once they respond, now you've got you're in the door to have to build that relationship, right? If you get the business card, I try and make sure I send somebody an email the next morning that says, "Hey, it was really great to meet you at XYZ event last night. I would love to circle up with you."
Sure.
So that's my initial follow up. When it comes to like what do I usually suggest? I'm very much of as I mentioned earlier, a coffee and lunch person. Like if I think there's a direct connection,
yeah, absolutely,
that I just know, like, oh, this is somebody that they're doing X, I do Y. These things crisscross all the time. Like if it's a CPA or an attorney and they've got a pretty unique background, or maybe we've got a common client in our past, or something like that. Like I'm definitely going to try and get together for coffee or lunch, or cocktails. Happy hours are always fun.
Yeah,
and
right.
It breaks the ice.
Drinks on Joe.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I also like to use. I find myself becoming more of a Teams meeting person rather than a phone call person. I don't know about you.
Mixed still for me. I'd say it's still mixed.
It's simpler to do the call, right? Because like everybody's on the go. You can find times on your calendar, whether you're in the car or whatever it is. But I do like being able to see people's faces. I'm very big on
reactions.
Exactly. Like you get so much out of seeing somebody else's face.
80% nonverbal, something like that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
Blink, right?
Yeah.
Great book. Like I mentioned, the coffees and the lunches are kind of where that's my meat and potato. But I am trying to get it to that point where for me it's all about setting up that relationship and then getting to what's the next step. It's not that you're just trying to get to the next step, but once you get these processes in place where you figure out how you most excel at networking, that's when it becomes kind of second nature and you can focus strictly on the relationship building piece of it. Right.
No, I think overarching all of this, relationship, authenticity.
Yeah.
Right. Purpose. Right. If you have a purpose before, purpose during, purpose after, and then the follow up, I think that's a common link for all of us. And And that's the most difficult part. You can shake as many hands and you can collect as many cards. And by no means am I an expert. Do I need to improve on certain occasions? Yeah, absolutely. But that's the biggest piece, and that's the hardest piece is the follow-up. After that, consistency and follow-up, because you're not really going to develop a relationship out of one time. You'll build the initial connection, but so there's just a lot of parts to networking and relationship building that takes time, and time and energy.
But the authenticity, to your point, super important.
It is.
Like, when you're younger in your career, you're uncomfortable. You might pretend to know more than you know.
Sure.
So that you don't think you're putting kind of a poor picture of yourself across, something like that. I find that when you don't know something about something and you tell people, you know what, that's super interesting. I'm going to look into that and learn more about that. I'd love to continue the conversation. Sure. Or maybe you can help me understand this a little better. Nobody knows everything about everything.
Right.
So be authentic. Look, there's this concept of like fake it till you make it kind of thing. To some degree, right? Like if you're uncomfortable in a room, make it feel like you're not uncomfortable.
Sure.
But don't be your authentic self, because those are the people that you're going to connect with. If they connect with you, if they like you, it's going to go places.
Right. Absolutely.
So don't try and put this pretense on about who you are or what you're there to achieve or that kind of stuff.
Sure. Now, I'm curious, just as we're making conversation, I think your authenticity, that discussion is important. Pivoting for a second, what are your thoughts on the concept of you never know who you're going to meet, or you never know where the next blank is going to come from, whether that's deal, transaction, whatever. I believe that. So let me get my opinion out there clear, that you don't know where it comes from. But I don't think that has to be a negative in terms of you're just networking with anybody and everybody and you'll talk to anybody. I think, there's a way to do it that is also efficient and polite, where it's not just, I'll take anything and everything. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do agree with you. We don't have enough time in the day at our levels to meet with every single person we meet.
Right.
So look, I'm happy to talk to a younger person when I go to one of these events. And even though they might not be able to do something for me, I'll spend some time with them. I'll talk to them.
Right.
But I might pass that off to one of my younger guys at my firm and say, look, I really like you. I can see that you're very bright. I think you got a bright future in front of you.
Right.
I might connect them with one of my younger guys and say, guys, this is somebody I want you to build your relationship with over the years, because as you guys come up, it's going to be a great relationship.
Absolutely.
I already know their boss. Like, that's who I do my work with.
Yeah.
But you guys should build your relationships.
Yeah.
I'm very big in our firm about my guys going to events and networking.
Sure.
I don't want you to work my relationships. I want you to build your own relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a ton of value in that. And I think you're right too, in terms of, because then you're staying involved with that individual via your team.
Yeah.
But I think you said it earlier, which I think is a great point, taking a call or having a conversation with anyone, because somebody who's not anywhere near your vertical, if you gave them the time of day to educate them on your space or to hear what they're looking at or questions they have, that's going to come back full circle. And I'm a firm believer of that. So it's a balance, right? If you can connect with them and, yourself, awesome. If it's somebody that you talk to once a year instead of 4 times a year, awesome. Or if it's somebody from your team can run with and grow with, even better.
Yeah. And it's happened to me. There's no doubt it's happened to me. I networked with somebody that, like, I didn't know where it was going. And it turns out, hey, actually my neighbor, he's got a business to sell. Do you mind if I give him your card?
Right.
Like, that happens all the time. So don't blow people off. Don't look past them. Like, obviously stay focused on what you were there to do.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But there is value in talking to people that maybe you didn't understand where it was going to come from.
Sure.
But guard your time, because we all only have so much time in a day, right?
That's a great point. It really is. It's a good concept, because it's easier said than done sometimes, right? I mean, I think you and I and a lot of people that we kind of network with it's an all-in mentality.
Yep.
So it's harder to train yourself to guard, but as two of us who have been at this a while, it's important. And if you can set that up and make that part of your routine to be mindful, I think you would be happier for it. So
yeah. Do you ever try and pull people to other events you're going to? Like, let's say you go to an event and you make a great connection. You've got another event that's coming up. Do you try and tell them, like, hey, you might get a ton of value out of this, like be value add to them in that sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I try to, if I can do it while we're together, if it's an in-person thing and it's like, hey, a couple weeks out or next week there's an event coming up, I'll try to mention it then. And then if I can, follow up an email and just say, hey, listen, these are the ones I mentioned to you. But I do think there's a ton of value in that. And I think to an earlier conversation we had, if you can bring that person, they might not know anybody, or maybe by chance they know more people in the room than you do. Yep. And then it's like a common connection right there. So yeah, I think there's nothing but positive outcomes from looping in. Now, maybe if it's you had lunch with attorney and different attorneys doing a lunch and learn, maybe not a great fit. That's obvious. But I'm just saying more often than not, there's probably not going to be crossover.
Yeah.
But in a positive way.
I tend to try and think, so when I'm meeting people, I try and think of people in my network that would get value out of the person that I'm meeting. Is that something that stays top of mind for you?
I would agree. And I think the sooner you can get to that, the better for everybody involved. Because I will say early on, I didn't think like that. And early on, right, I think part of that's comfortability in my role, comfortability with this individual, getting to know them. That down the line, I started thinking of putting dots together. And maybe that's just the natural cadence of you become a connector and you become somebody who's thinking of them in your network because, and this is a concept we've come across before off camera and then on this podcast, I think today, is you might not have a deal for them right there, but you might be able to make a connection that's of value to them to then open that person's book as a possibility for them. So now you've just magnified their future opportunities.
Yeah, I try and build my other relationships by making introductions through people. I've had a lot of people be like, Joe, you're an expert connector of people. And it's because you should be thinking outside of what's good for you. I'm a true believer of what goes around comes around.
Absolutely.
Like I've made connections for people and it led to them making connections for me. Like, hey, that was a great intro. Who can I introduce you to?
Sure.
So leveraging your network for your networking is also just so important for that sense. Like, don't be a taker. Be a giver. I haven't read this book. Chris Struan keeps referencing this book with me. It's The Go-Giver.
Right.
I haven't read that yet, and it's on my list. Sorry, Chris. I got a lot of stuff to do. But that concept of like give first, take second.
Sure.
I think it's instrumental if you really want to try and be good at networking.
Right. And I think a lot of these things we're talking about admittedly probably didn't come natural right away, right? We worked into it. We saw other people do it. We've taken pieces from different people that we've networked with and kind of built our own strategy. So anybody out there that's kind of fresher or maybe senior in their career, but fresher to the networking part of it, right? I mean, you and I know that there's a ton of professions that you can hammer away and be experts at your job. And the next phase is some kind of business development. So my message would be it's not super easy. We're not experts. Do we feel a lot more comfortable with it today than we did 10 years ago? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But there's different iterations and you find your own style too.
Yep. Yeah, you don't have to copy somebody else. Right. Look, I used to walk into a room and I'm the guy who would be in a cold sweat. Like I was terrified walking into that room. Right. That was not my natural personality. Right. Figuring out, you know what? What's the worst that happens? They don't like me. Gave it a shot.
Right.
Like it.
Right.
Very important.
Yeah. And I think too, is part of that process is you understand the value of your personal time. Yeah. So if you're going to an event, try to make it fruitful, right? Because otherwise you probably aren't going to go to the event or you're going to stop going. And then you don't want that either if you're in a business development role. Yep. Or a piece of your role is business development. So no, I think that there is a lot of genuine interest too with who you're talking to. So we talked about that. I mean, the relationship, authenticity, genuine. I mean, it's very clear that there's a common thread here. Yeah. Is it's not transactional. Yeah. Pieces of your business and the field you operate in may be transactional, but how you get there is not. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. You got anything else to talk about? I think we covered it. I mean,
I think we covered it. Obviously, we have guests pick out a place to do their favorite thing: breakfast, lunch, dinner, happy hour. Do you have a can't miss event? And maybe that is something that's newer, something that is in, the holiday season. I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about, how do you structure your holidays and the events and whatnot, but is there a couple events maybe that come to mind, either that's happened yet this year or is to happen?
So I kind of break it up into general networking and then like industry specific networking, right? So like M&A All-Star Awards is coming up for ACG. That's one that I go to see a lot of the people that I already know.
Right.
You know, Cards and Cigars is coming. We have a table this year.
Right.
I'm super excited because I see a ton of people that I already know. I get introduced to a lot of people that I don't know through that network. So that's one that like I always want to go to.
Absolutely.
This past year or this year, I actually got invited. Joe Mackey, thank you very much for the invite to Red Run's Wild Game Dinner, which is like
you mentioned that was awesome.
700 people. Yeah. Just an absolute stellar event.
Right.
From the food to the people that attend to cigars to like everything is just top notch. So like those are the events that are kind of on my calendar that I want to be at moving forward.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, I would say Cards and Cigars went for my first time last year, and I've always heard how it was an excellent event, and that played out. You see a ton of people, and then you get to meet people from their network, so that's a big one. I do like DAC Cigar Night.
Ooh, I mean, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Well played.
And soon to be an annual thing and probably semi-annual, our Excel networking event. You mentioned it earlier. We had 180 people register. We had a lot of people show a ton of support following the event and interested in future events. So keep an eye out for that because I think that'll be one that people are soon be adding to their must-go-to.
I agree, and I
calendar.
don't know how I missed that one.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of them. We're social people. There's a lot of events. But that one I think will be added to the list.
Yeah, no, I like all of those. So,
awesome.
Okay, so recap. So first of all, I think at the very top is focus on the relationship, not just collecting business cards.
Right.
Be a genuine person.
How you do it, one-on-one, small group, big events, follow-up. I think that's another.
Do appropriate follow-up.
Yeah.
Key.
Right.
Find action steps.
Sure. I think that's a good one. There's a good takeaway by you.
Yeah.
Action steps are huge. And then I would say lean into your style.
Yeah.
That would be my takeaway. Again, not an expert by any means, but I've kind of leaned into what's worked for me and I've tried to continue to improve it.
Yeah. I love it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode. We've got a bunch more of great episodes upcoming. As always, check us out on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple, Spotify. Let us know if you have any thoughts. We've had a lot of people reach out to us about content ideas, and we appreciate that. Again, Joe and I can talk by ourselves forever. We have a lot of guest ideas, but we also appreciate any feedback and any concepts that you haven't seen discussed or a follow-up to or a part two. So excited about some of the guests we have coming up.
Yeah, we've got probably a half dozen great guests coming up that I'm looking forward to, and you guys won't have to listen to us anymore.
Yeah.
Besides asking questions.
Yeah, exactly. No, but thank you for joining us on Making the Deal, Frameworks for Transactions, the podcast focused on lower middle market and how to bring deals to a close. I'm Shawn Mercino.
And I'm Joe Allen.
Thank you.